So I've had another story that I've been trying to figure out how to make into like a point of view like I normally do, but there's too much background information and I think I'm gonna have to make this just a story time so it's not several parts. It's still gonna be multiple parts, but it won't be as annoying. So when I worked at the Mexican restaurant, there's this assistant manager that everyone hated, and this is a story about how I was the last straw that finally got him fired, and I'm very proud of it. So here's some background information that's gonna sound like it's really not related at all, but trust me, it's important. So when I was a baby, like I was 2 and younger, my dad was a pastor at our local church. So fast forward to when I worked at the Mexican restaurant, this manager had a girlfriend who attended that church and knew my parents and knew me as a baby. The girlfriend was always really nice to me, but I didn't really know her because, again, I was a baby when I first met her. So this assistant manager basically had his job because he's been working there since he was like 15. He started as a busboy and like worked his way up, so he's kind of got like the legacy thing, whatever. The owners won't fire him. He's been there for forever. They feel like they owe him that. So he definitely has a sense of entitlement. He knows that he can get away with most everything. So he would tell his girlfriend to come in, bring her kids, and they would sit at a table. They would have a server. They would have their meals. And he told the server one time in particular, he said, "Hey, don't bring her a check. I'll take care of it." So when we heard, "I'll take care of it" from him, we thought that meant he would pay for it. All he did was just use his manager code to change every item to $0 and then just zeroed it out and they didn't have to pay for anything. So the next day, the actual manager, like the head manager, comes in and sees a ticket under this server's name where all of the items are just turned to 0, and he rips her a new one. He's like, "Who do you think you are, thinking that you can just zero out stuff for your friends' tickets?" Like, this is like, just went off on her. She's almost in tears, like, "I have no idea what you're talking about, like, I don't know what's going on, like, please show me." So she tries to explain, like, "Oh, that was, the assistant manager's girlfriend." So then the general manager looks up the cameras on that table, that time, and that date and everything, and it is, in fact, that assistant manager's girlfriend. And he immediately apologizes and knows that it was the assistant manager that made that call and zeroed everything out, which he's not allowed to do. Managers have their own discount, and it's not free. So the next week, the girlfriend comes in again. And again, she's always really nice to me. This isn't slander about the girlfriend. She comes in, she has her kids as well. And in the county that I worked, was still technically a dry county, so we could only have like one vessel of liquor or any kind of alcohol in front of somebody. So you couldn't have a beer and a margarita. You could have your beer and finish it and then your margarita, but not together. So I'm her server this time. I'm trying to be really careful because I don't want to get in trouble like the last server, so I watch everything that happens. She asks for a beer, I get her a beer. 2 minutes later, the assistant manager brings her a frozen drink. He says, "It's a virgin daiquiri," and I look at it and it is 1,000% a mojito. If the wrong person sees the 2 drinks on her table, I'm in trouble. Part 2 in just a second. So I panic because there's 1 adult woman and 2 children, and she's got 2 alcoholic beverages on her table, and I'm in trouble if the wrong person were to see that. So I go to the assistant manager and I'm like, "Hey, what did you just bring her?" And he's like, "Oh, I just made like a virgin daiquiri for her." And I just look at him like, "Oh, okay, but there's mint in it. It's obviously a mojito, but I don't know what to say." So I just go back to the bar, and we made all of our own drinks. We didn't have a bartender. So he had not cleaned up after himself and left all of the ingredients for a mojito out, including an empty bottle of rum. So I'm thinking, dang, that's 2 alcoholic beverages. If the marshal walks in and sees this, he's like, "Who's that server?" I lose my liquor license. So I'm not knowing what to do. I go to the hostess and I'm like, should I like text the general manager? Should I confront the assistant manager? Or should I just like not do anything? Like I don't know what to do. I really don't want to get in trouble. And the hostess is like, "Well, are you sure that it's a mojito and not actually a virgin daiquiri?" So I leave the host stand, I go to the bar and I pick up this bottle of the empty rum. This is paint, but the empty rum over my head. I was like, whether it was a daiquiri or mojito, it definitely wasn't virgin. So I'm like this with the bottle above my head as the assistant manager like walks around and sees me, and I'm like, shit, I wasn't ready for this. But I had to play it off like I was. So I was like, "Oh, virgin daiquiri? Well, where'd all the rum go?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot. She always wants me to make mojitos for her, and I just found mint, so I just made her a mojito." And I was like, "Okay, then why'd you tell me it was a virgin daiquiri?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it, I'll ring it in right now." So I thought that was over and done with. He rang it in, and he did actually pay for everything. So I was like, okay, this wasn't that bad. However, someone told the general manager about that incident, so the next day he comes to me like, "So what happened with the mojito daiquiri, whatever?" I fill him in. And the general manager has been trying to get this guy fired forever. Like, he hates this guy. So he pounces on me, like with this opportunity of like catching him in the act of like giving away free alcohol. So then the general manager goes to the assistant manager, and he, really gets on. He just lays into him about how unprofessional it is, all the other things that he's been in trouble for, and really gets on to him. The assistant manager knows that I must have told him, so now he's really mad at me. So, because the assistant manager is upset with me for getting him in trouble, even though it was his own actions, he just starts telling all of my coworkers about my home life that he supposedly knows from the girlfriend when she attended church when I was a, infant. And he told all of my coworkers that I'm the problem child because my dad was fucking the pastor's wife. Well, if you recall, my father was the pastor, so his wife would in fact be the pastor's wife. And my parents are divorced now. Obviously not for that reason, but like, that's really harmful because he doesn't know why they're divorced. He doesn't know how that affects me, but he's using it as like slander for all my friends. So all my coworkers tell me that this manager is telling everyone that my dad was fucking the pastor's wife, and that's why I'm such a problem child for him, even though my father was the pastor. I'm livid. I am appalled that, like, I'm subordinate, like, to this man, and he is targeting me personally and, talking shit about my home life, and I don't know what he's trying to accomplish. I'm so mad. So I asked the general manager for the owner's emails, and he's like, why? And I told him, I was like, well, because the assistant manager has been saying, this and that. And he's like, oh. And he sends me her email and, quote, says, fuck him up. So I have a very professional, very kindly but strongly worded email of like, hi, I'm so sorry to bother you with this. Like, I know this isn't like your problem, but this is something I really need to speak up about, da-da-da-da. And then like use screenshots of him talking to the other coworkers about me and just like ruined him. And then I also finished it up with, like, in addition to how he behaves at work, like, he's always playing on his phone, like, playing games on his phone, like, with the volume on, so you hear, like, little shooter sounds. He was always stealing food. He was always stealing, like, the dry goods, like, out of the paper storage and stuff. He was always just real mean to everybody. He would just leave work without telling anyone. Like, he was a horrible, horrible, horrible manager. And then I ended my email with like, oh, here's my schedule this week. I'm more than happy to talk in person if you'd like to. Also, here's my phone number if you'd like me to clarify anything. Thank you so much for your time. And the manager was like, oh, nope, I'm pretty sure you gave us enough details. We'll handle it. And I was like, tight. So it's the next day at work. Both managers are working. The general manager knows that I sent the email. The assistant manager has no idea. Everyone in the restaurant knows I sent the email, but not the assistant manager. So then the general manager is like, all right, obviously there's some like horrible stuff that's happened between you two. How would you feel if I let y'all kind of talk it out and I delegated? And I was like, yes, please, like, give me the opportunity to speak to this man how I really want to. So at the end of the night, he takes us outside while everyone's, like, closing and stuff. And I was in that, like, blind rage. I couldn't even tell you what I said. But I do remember telling him, you better apologize to my parents for speaking about them that poorly when they come into this restaurant all the time. And he said he'd apologize to my parents, but I didn't believe him. So I called my mom and I said, hey, can you call the restaurant really quickly? And she was caught up on everything. She was like, please don't let me do this. But she did. So she calls the restaurant and we had this little cashier answer the phone and she's like, hi, is, the assistant manager there? And he runs and gets the assistant manager. He answers the phone. And my mom's like, hi, this is Mary Ann's mom. I'm sure you had something to say to me. And he's like, oh my God, on behalf of Bubbles, I'm so sorry. And then the next day he was fired. So that's my kind of, you're welcome, the rest of my coworkers.